All right, let's see if we can get through Nitro 7.4. This is various algorithms for array lists. So they're creating 3 array lists of integer objects, list 1, list 2, and list 3. They're adding some numbers to each of those lists, and they're just wanting to see if they're equal. So they want us to write a method called equal, or I should say equals. So what we want to first do is we want to see if the 2 arrays have the same length. So if Arraylist1 dot size, if that is not equal to Arraylist2 dot size, then let's just return false and be done. Because if they don't have the same size, then they are not equal. But if we get past that step, then that means they are the same size. So we can do a loop going from 0 to array to less than array1 dot size. And we can go through every item and see if the item at that index in one list is the same as the item at that index in the other list. So we can say if array1 dot get the item at index I, if that is not equal to array2 dot get the item at index I, if those 2 values, index I in one array and index I in the other array, if those 2 values are not equal, then let's return false, because that means the 2 lists are not equal. But if we get through that whole loop and we never find 2 corresponding entries that are unequal, then we know that all of the corresponding entries are equal and we can return true. So now if we run this code, 2 of their lists are equal, 2 of them are not. So I think that's all we had to implement there. And notice one of the things they're checking on is if the lists are the same length. So, okay, that's good for 7.4.5. Now let's take a look at 7.4.6. Airline tickets. This is going to be a little bit more involved because you see 3 different classes over here. So there's a lot going on this one. Let's try to take it apart piece by piece. So the line of passengers, passengers have lined up to board the plane. The line of passengers has already been created. So they are doing something here called add passengers. And they're going through a loop and they're creating 15 passengers at random. It doesn't really matter to us to dissect the code of how they're making that happen, but they're doing that part of it for us. They're creating 15 random passengers for us. And they're stored in an array list called ticket. So up here they created the array list of airline ticket objects called tickets. They're adding passengers to that array list. And then for every element that's in that array list, we're going to print out that element. And then we're going to do something with the ticket organizer object and some other stuff. So devise a way to separate passengers into the correct boarding groups. Currently, there is an airline ticket class that holds information like boarding group, seat, row, and boarding group. And you'll notice if we scroll down, there's a method called getBoardingGroup. I'm going to copy that because I think we're going to need that later. So we're going to use that from the airline ticket class. Use the ticket organizer class, which right now has nothing except an instance variable called tickets. So there's an array list of airline ticket objects called tickets, which has been declared but has not been initialized. So in our constructor, public ticket organizer, we are going to need the user to pass us an array list of airline ticket objects. And I'm just going to call this A for right now. Okay, it doesn't really matter what that's called, but I'm going to call it A for right now. And then tickets, which is the instance variable array list, is going to be equal to A. All right, so that's all that the constructor needs to do. Use the ticket organizer class to help fix the order of passengers. First, create a constructor. We did that. Assigns it to the instance variable tickets. We did that. Now we need a getTickets method to get the array list of airline tickets. So we're going to say public array list, but not just any array list, an array list of airline ticket called getTickets. And we are just going to simply return the instance variable tickets. So because that instance variable is private, we need a getter method for that. So that's what we just did there. And then in the ticket organizer class, we're going to create something called get print passengers by boarding group. So public, I think this is going to be public void. We're not returning anything because we're actually printing print passengers by boarding group. So there are 5 possible boarding groups numbered 1 through 5. So we're going to have one loop. Actually, I'm going to call this B. B equals 1, B less than or equal to 5, B plus plus. This is going to be our boarding group. And so with B at 1, the first time through the loop, we want to go through all of our tickets and see which passengers are in boarding group 1. First of all, we're going to do a system.out.print line. And I'm going off of what it says right down here. Okay, system.out.print line in quotes, boarding group, but not boarding group 1. I want to say boarding group B. And then after that, another quote with the colon in it. So when B is 1, we're going to print out boarding group 1. And then we're going to do a loop that traverses our array list. Int I, I forgot to say int up here for my B. Int I equals 0, I less than the tickets array list dot size, and I plus plus. And every time through the loop, we want to get the ticket at this location. So tickets dot get the ticket, or I should say the airline ticket, at index I. And once we have gotten the airline ticket at index I, we want to use the airline ticket method get boarding group. So for this ticket that we just got, we want to do dot get boarding group. And we want to check to see if that boarding group is equal to B, which is the current boarding group that we're on. If it is, then we should say system.out.println in quotes passenger, a space, and then end quote, and then a plus sign, and then passenger at index I. And do end that with the semicolon. And if I come over here to the tester, so I feel like The ticket organizer, we're okay there. And print passengers by boarding group is what we just implemented. So let's comment out these two. And crossing my fingers, let's see if everything else works okay. Okay, what is it not like? Arraylist is out of scope. So whenever we use the Arraylist object, we need to have this import statement here. And I think over here on Airline Ticket, we do not have that import statement. So we need that right there. And we need that right there also. So that needs to be, it would be better if we could import it once for the entire project. But anyways, there we go. So here are all of the passengers that the CodeHS code created at random for us. And if you look, you will see we've got passenger 2 and passenger 3 that are both in boarding group 1. Passenger 6 is in boarding group 1. And remember, this list is generated randomly, so your results might look different than mine. Passenger 8 is in boarding group 1 and passenger 11. So if I scroll down, I should see boarding group 1 is passenger 2, passenger 3, passenger 6, 8, 11. 2, 3, 6, 8, 11. Let's scroll down. Boarding group 1 is 2, 3, 6, 8, 11. Wow, they're all off by 1. So the reason why they're all off by 1 is that they are wanting us to refer to the first passenger as passenger 1. But our array list is indexed starting at 0. So if I is 0, we would like to say I plus 1. So for whatever value I is, we don't want to be calling the passengers 0 through 14. We want to be calling the passengers 1 through 15. So whatever our 0-based index I is, we're going to add 1. Let's run that again and see if that looks a little bit different. But my boarding group 1 is going to be completely different this time. So boarding group 1 now has passenger 5, 11, and 12. So if I scroll down here, 5, 11, and 12. So that looks like it's working beautifully. So the print passengers by boarding group, that has been implemented correctly. Okay, so that all is done. Now, you should also create a method called can board together. So I'm assuming that they likewise want that in the ticket organizer. Let me make sure in the tester, they're calling this from ticket organizer can board together. So in ticket organizer, we want a method called can board together. In the ticket organizer, we need a public void can board together. And we're going to scroll through the entire list of passengers. I shouldn't say scroll through. We're going to traverse the entire list of passengers. Int I equals 0, I less than tickets.size, I plus plus. And we're going to check the condition whether or not the passengers can board together. So they're telling us that if 2 consecutive passengers, if a passenger has the same row and same boarding group as the person behind them, so that would be passenger I plus 1, if they have the same row and the same boarding group, then we should print that those 2 can board together. So this is going to be a rather long if statement. Okay, but I'm going to write it in words first. If this passenger and next passenger have same row and same boarding group, if this passenger and the next passenger have the same row and the same boarding group, then we're going to do system.out.println in quotes the word passenger space, and then I don't think my I, but I think my I, oh Lord have mercy, I think my I plus 1, so passenger I plus 1, and then quote space can board with passenger space end quote plus in parentheses I plus 2. And then we need another plus sign and that little period at the end. So every time through the loop, we're going to check if the condition has been met for them to board together. And if it has, then we'll print out that they can board together. So now I wrote this condition in words. We got to kind of write it in code. So first of all, this passenger and the next passenger, that would be tickets get the ticket at index I, and the other one would be tickets dot get the passenger or the ticket at index I plus 1. And now I already have to make one modification, because if I'm going to be looking at index I plus 1, remember the ticket size should be 15. And when we say I less than 15, that means I is going to go up to 14. But then if I is 14 and I say I plus 1, that's going to be 15. And there is nothing at index 15 because they're indexed 0 to 14. So I need this to not go up to less than tickets.size, but up to less than tickets.size minus 1. Okay, so here's our two passengers. If this passenger, the one at index I, and the next passenger, the one at index I plus 1, if they have the same row, so this ticket at location I get row, if that's equal to this ticket at location I plus 1 get row, so that's taken care of if they have the same row, and of course looks like double ampersand, they have the same boarding group. Okay, let me expand this a little bit more. They have the same boarding group. So I want to say almost the exact same thing as this, except the ticket at index I get boarding group, if that's the same as the ticket at index I plus 1, get boarding group. So if they have the same row and they have the same boarding group, then we're going to print this out. I think that will almost get us what we want, except for this. So let's run the code and first of all see if we have no error and see if it tells us who can board together. Okay, we got an error, illegal start of an expression. System.out.println passenger and I plus 1 and can board with passenger I plus 2 plus a period. Oh Lord, I got one extra parenthesis there. Try this again. Okay, so let's go back to the tester, the airline ticket tester, and let's uncomment out these two statements here. So now we're going to try our method that we just wrote called can board together. Passengers in line who can board together are passenger 14 can board together with passenger 15. So let's scroll up and see why. Because passenger 14 and 15 are both in boarding group 5 and both in row 5. So they can board together. This time we got two different ones that could board together, 9 and 10, 12 and 13. So 9 and 10, they're both in the same boarding group, both in the same row. And then 12 and 13, they're both in the same boarding group, both in the same row. So that appears to be all working correctly. The only problem is if we don't find any passengers who can board together, then it just prints nothing. And we don't want to say that. If there's no passengers that can board together, then it should print that out to the console. So we need an extra variable. Maybe you could call this a helper variable. I'm not sure, but I'm going to call this a Boolean, and I'm just going to call it found one. Found one, I'm going to start off to equal false. Okay, it doesn't matter what you call this Boolean, but I'm just trying to make a little bit in context. I'm creating any kind of Boolean and setting it equal to false. If we find two passengers that can board together, then I'm going to take that Boolean, found one, and make it equal to true. So when we're all done going through that loop, then what we're going to say is, if we did not found one, I know that doesn't sound like proper English, but if we did not found one, then we need to system.out.println no passengers can board together. And they didn't really tell me exactly what that should look like. So I'm only going to find out when I do my check code if I didn't print that out exactly. So this is saying, so this found nobody that could board together, and it's saying no passengers can board together. So let's see how that was exactly supposed to be. Oh, I guess what I wrote is fine. All right, so we're good there. That's Nitro 7.4.6 on airline tickets. Uh-oh, can board together works, group works. Uh-oh. But everything over here, okay, let's do this again. There we go. There we go. They want us to print out this. So let's put that in these quotations here. Bam, that's what they wanted it to look like. So let's test it again a couple times. And because the list of passengers is created randomly, we might have to do this a couple times to be sure that we're good. And this is all check marks now, so we're good. So now we're on to 7.4.7. Billboard Top 10. Let's go. Okay, so in this Billboard Top 10, we have a musician class that holds some information on a musician, how many weeks they've been in the top 40, and if they're platinum and stuff like that. And then we have a Billboard list that holds the top 10 musicians. And we have to implement a couple methods there to determine if a new musician should be added to the top 10 list. Okay, so in this little project, we have a musician class that stores a bunch of information about a musician. The constructor needs the name, the number of weeks in the top 40, and the album sold. And then using that information, we set those equal to the instance variables. But there's one other instance variable that's a Boolean that is not passed to us by the user, but rather we look at the number of albums sold by this artist. We send that over to the method called setPlatinum. And if they've sold 1 million albums, then we say that the platinum is true. Otherwise, the platinum will be false. And then there's getter methods for all of the instance variables. So our main work is going to be in the Billboard class. The Billboard class has an array list of musician objects called Top 10. I really don't like them using Top 10 over here and Top 10 over here. I think that's really sloppy. But in the Billboard class, we need a method. They say a void method called add. We need a musician object, which we will call for right now artist. And under certain circumstances, we want to add the artist. So if there are less than 10 musicians in the list, and if the musician has platinum status, if they don't have platinum status, then I don't think we want to add them to the list at all. So I think we want to say if artist.get is platinum, I think that was the over here, get is platinum. If the artist.get is platinum, in other words, if they are platinum, then we want to do a whole bunch of stuff. Okay. Otherwise, we want to print something like system.out.println, maybe artist.get name has not sold enough albums, something like that. Okay. Now, if they are platinum, then we need to do another check. If the top 10 list dot size is less than 10, if there are not already 10 people on the top 10 list, then for sure, let's add this person. They're a platinum artist, and we don't have 10 in the top 10 yet, so let's add them. Top 10 dot add artist. Okay. Otherwise, if there's already 10 in the list, then there's a lot more checking that we have to do, and we're going to call a method. We're going to do a call to a method called replace, and we're going to pass along this current artist. So now we have to write this method replace. So replace needs a musician object called artist. Again, I don't like the repeated use of the same variable. So here's what we're going to do. If we've gotten this far, we already know that the person is platinum. But the problem is there's already 10 people on the list. So we need to figure out if this current artist is more deserving than anybody else on the list. So a couple integers before we traverse the list. Integer low index we will set equal to 0. And integer low 40 we will set equal to the person on the top 10 list at index 0 dot get something about get top 40. Musician get weeks in top 40. Get weeks in top 40. So we're setting the low to be equal to the number of weeks in the top 40 by the first musician. For int I equals 1, I less than the top 10 array list dot size and I plus plus. I'm starting this loop at 1, by the way, because I've already set the first person at index 0. I've already set that person as the low person on the list. And now we're going to loop through the rest of the people on the list to see if there's anybody lower. If the person in the top 10 list at location I, and then dot get weeks in top 40. If the number of weeks in the top 40 for the artist at index I, if that's less than our current low for the top 40, then we want to make a new low in the top 40. So we're going to say low index is now equal to I instead of 0, and low 40 is now equal to this person at index I get their weeks in the top 40. So when we've gone through that entire loop, we will now have in low index and in low 40, we will have the index of the person, the artist in the list that has the lowest number of weeks in the top 40. Then, if our artist dot get weeks in top 40, sorry, just get weeks in top 40. If our artist that we're trying to see if they should be added, if their weeks in the top 40 is greater than the lowest that we have in the top 40, then we should add them to the list. Otherwise, we should say something like system.out.println artist.getName does not have enough, I need to see more of this, does not have enough weeks on the top 40, something like that. Okay, so, but if they do, if they have enough weeks on the top 40 that's greater than our lowest, then we need to replace the lowest with this new artist. So first thing is we're going to let the user know what we're doing. System.out.println replacing, who are we replacing? We're replacing top 10 array list dot get the musician at low index. That's the musician that has the lowest number of weeks on the top 40. That musician dot get name, replacing that person, and then I need another quote space with, and the new person is going to be artist dot get name. And here's how we make that happen. In our top 10 list, we're going to use the remove method, and we're going to remove the person at low index. And then on our top 10 list, we're going to add this person called artist. So let's see if any of this is going to work anywhere near correctly. Let me highlight the Billboard tester. Oh, I'm missing somewhere a semicolon. Billboard 45. Billboard 45. This long print statement is missing a semicolon. Okay, so they tried to add Carol the dog, who only has 60 albums sold. Carol the dog has not sold enough albums. We're not replacing according to the number of albums sold. We're replacing according to the number of weeks on the top 40. And all of these other artists are in the hundreds of weeks on the top 40. Pink Floyd has the lowest number of weeks on the top 40. Carol the dog has been, Tracy the turtle has been on the top 40 for 332 weeks. So that person should replace Pink Floyd. That is correct. Now, Alex Ecker has enough albums sold. That's well over 1 million. But with 100 weeks on the top 40, all these other ones are way over 100 weeks. So Carol the dog did not get added because Carol the dog only had 60 albums sold. Alex Ecker did not get added because Alex Ecker does not have enough weeks on the top 40. So I thought the code was messing up, but we're not looking at the album sold. We're looking at that number right there. So I think, unless I was supposed to print out something a little bit differently, I think okay, should put new guy at the front, and our code instead is putting new guy at the end. So that's easy to fix. I don't feel like they said that, but that should be easy to fix, because when we add this artist, we're going to add them at location low index. So that will fix that problem. Okay. And then has less weeks in the top 40 than the other musicians. Okay, so I just kind of wish that they would have said over here, they would have said exactly what they wanted in quotes, so we didn't have to run the code 14 times to see what should be in the quotes. But anyways, we've done that, and so we're good, I believe, going on to 7.4.8, user data cleanup. This ought to be interesting. Okay, so on user data cleanup, company is doing some data cleanup, notices that the email list of all users has been getting outdated. For one, there are some users with repeat email addresses, and some of the email accounts no longer exist. Your job is to create a series of methods. That sounds kind of long. A series of methods that can purge some of the old data. Create static methods in the data purge class. Create static methods in the data purge class. So public static that do the following. Remove duplicates. This method takes an email list. Let's see what we have over here. We have an array list of strings. Okay, so we want an array list of strings. This takes an array list of string objects. Let's just call that A. And removes the duplicate email values. It also prints to the console what duplicates have been removed. So to do that, we're going to go through the list twice. For int I equals 0 to I less than the array list dot size, and then I plus plus, then another loop for int j equals wherever I is, and j less than the array list dot size, and j plus plus, if the array list at index j is, oh, we got to say dot equals. Dot equals, we got to say dot equals because they're strings. Dot equals the array list at index I, then we want to remove from the array list, we want to remove the item at index j. Now, the problem is, remember that that's reducing the size of the list by 1. So whatever was in location j plus 1 is now being shifted down into location j. So we want to decrease j by 1 before continuing with our loop. And also, when we say this, before we remove this person, we want to say something like system.out.println. It says print to the console which duplicate emails have been removed. So we're going to say removing the array list at location j. Okay, and so the removed duplicates, let's do this and this. The removed duplicates should work now. So we should be able to do this much of the code. Remove duplicates, invalid method declaration. Oh, public static void. Let's try that. Okay, what are we expecting here? System.out.println data purge.remove duplicates, data purge.remove duplicates emails. Oh, we have not implemented contains only emails yet. So far, we haven't done that yet, so sorry. Okay, so it doesn't look like we removed any, oh no, we did, we removed a whole bunch. So we removed this person, that means TB Maddox must be somewhere else on the list. I don't see that. So, oh, we removed everybody, so we did something wrong here. We want J to start at I plus 1. Otherwise, we'll be comparing an item to itself, and they will be equal, and we'll remove it. So let's fix that. I think we should only be removing a couple. Okay, there we go. So we're removing improv, because improv is there and improv is there. We're removing Portel because Portel is there and Portel is there. So that so far is working correct. Now remove AOL. So now we need a method, public static void remove AOL. That needs an array list of string objects, which I'm again going to call array. This method removes all email addresses from a list that are from AOL.com. It notifies the user which email addresses are being removed as well. For int I equals 0, I less than the array list dot size, I plus plus. If AOL is there, then remove from the array list the item at index I, and just like we did before, I minus minus, because now what was in I plus 1 is going to be in I, so we need to check I again, and we need to print out something like we printed out up here that we're removing the person at index I. So how do we check if AOL is there? Let's bounce up here to the docs and string methods, and equals index of, there we go, index of. So if the array list dot the item at index I dot index of what? Index of AOL.com. If we find that at a location greater than or equal to 0, then remove it. If it's not found, the index of will return -1. If it returns something greater than or equal to 0, then we will remove that person from the list. So let's see who's at AOL.com. We've got this person here and this person here. So we've got a couple at AOL.com that should be removed. So now let's do data purge remove AOL. So once again, it should remove Improv and Portel because they were both duplicates. And now it's removing this one and this one because they were both at AOL.com. So now our list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 should be down to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's looking good so far. One more to implement. Contains only emails. So back to data purge. We need another public static void contains only emails. This method should return true. So let's just have it return true. This method should return true. Let me go back over here to the data tester. So now we have that. Should return true if all of the data in the email list is actually an email address. We will define something as an email address if it contains the characters at and period. So we can say this. We need to go all the way through the list, all the way through the array list for int I equals 0. I less than, we need to be given an array list. We need an array list of string objects, which we will call A, for I equals 0 to the array list dot size I plus plus, oops, if this string at index I dot index of the at symbol, if the index of the at symbol is equal to -1, then that means the at symbol was not found, and we want to stop right there and return false if the at symbol is not found. But also, if the index of the at symbol is -1, that means there's no at symbol. Or if the index of period, if the index of period is -1, then if either one of those is -1, then that means it's not found. If either one of those is not found, then we should return false. Otherwise, we should return true. Return true, so this cannot be a void. This should be public static Boolean. List is all emails true. Let's mess with one. Mess with the first one and take out the @ sign. List is all emails false. Okay, let's put the @ sign back. Okay, let's take out the period on one of them. Let's go down to this one and take out the period. List is all emails false. Okay, so I think I like the way that one is working. And we're removing the duplicates and we're removing the AOLs. So I think we should be good to go. Woohoo! So that was kind of long, but we are now done with Nitro 7.4.